everybody, if you're new, welcome. My name is Mel and today we're going to be talking about my Magical Readathon TBR. If you don't know what the Magical Readathon is, it is a month-long readathon hosted by G from Book Roast. She used to do this as a Harry Potter inspired. It has since been transformed into this very elaborate thing that G came up with herself, which is absolutely incredible. This is the autumn equinox, so it's the second part to what we did in, I believe, May, and I had a ton of fun with this the first time that I did it, and I'd want to follow up on that. So in the month of May, I went through the career to become a necromancer, and so there are different prompts and different levels of how many prompts you have to do depending on what career you chose. For a necromancer, I have to read a minimum of 8 books to complete my career and pass all of my classes, essentially. So I am going to be going over those books with you guys. Am I going to pass? I don't know, because, well, 8's a lot of books and they are some chunky books, so fingers crossed that I'm able to complete and pass the class. If not, we may roll it over into September and hopefully G won't mind. And the first class that I am going to study is Animal Studies. For Animal Studies, I need to get an O, which is just ordinary. That's just 1 prompt. Obviously, the first prompt is to study familiars, and that's to read a book with an animal companion. I might, maybe, possibly be stretching this one just a teeny tiny bit, but the first book in this series has something called constructs, and they are a lot of times made up of like animal bits, and there is one particular thing that happens at the very end that introduces a more prominent construct or animal-like companion. So I'm going to go with the second book, and that is Blood of the Chosen by Django Wexler. This is the sequel to Ashes of the Sun and the second book in the Burning Blade and Silver Eye series. I adored the first book. It was my first 5-star fantasy of the year. It is very unique. It has a little bit of a sci-fi undertone with a lot of interesting fantasy elements. It is action-packed. There are a lot of really good relationships, and I like the way that Django Wexler puts everything in a different perspective, and he doesn't make everything super easy for the characters. It follows Maya, who was taken from her home at a young age and trained to be a, I can't pronounce the word, but basically like this kind of Jedi, essentially. So she has a bunch of magic and she works for the Empire. But her brother, because she was taken from him, decides that the Empire is evil and he is fighting back. So they are on 2 different sides of the war and 2 different sides of the Empire. There are ghouls, there are chosen. It's really complicated but super unique, and I loved it. I cannot wait to read the second book in the series. I know Cassidy gave it a 4.5 star, and so I'm very excited and will definitely be wanting to get to this in the month of August. The next course that I have to pass is Spells and Incantations, and I need both an O and a Q in this class to pass. O is going to be the spell Recolor, so I have to use a color wheel to decide what color book I am going to be using for this prompt. Okay, so let's see what color I got. Gray. Okay, that'll work. I'm going to be stretching this one just a little bit because I really need to get some duplicates on from my August TBR, and I'm going to be going with Name of All Things. Now, hear me out. Can you see how much gray there is right here on the cover? This is all gray. So even though the cover has a lot of black, it has gray too. So we're going to go with gray. She didn't say the whole cover had to be gray. She just said it had to have the color on the cover. So we're going to be going with The Name of All Things. This is the second book in the Chorus of the Dragon series. The Rune of Kings follows our main character Kieran, and he gets himself in a lot of trouble. We follow his past timeline where he is trying to understand who he is and finds out that he may have something to do with one of the high political fantasies. And then we're also following him in more of a present timeline where he has become a slave. I enjoyed the first series a lot. It is very complicated and honestly really hard to explain, but I've heard some very polarizing things about book 2, which is told in a similar manner but a different set of characters, so I'm very excited to give this one a try. Then we have Q, which is qualified, and that is for the incantation Echo, to steal a book off of someone's TBR. So I am going to be stealing the Bitter Twins from Cassidy. She's got this on her TBR, and so do I for the Backlist Book Club. This is the second book in the Winnowing trilogy, follows a couple of different characters, one who is the prince of this dying world, and he's essentially a vampire. He's just trying to get away from all of that, live his own life. The other who is an older winemaker, and she is looking for a lost love, and then the last who is a witch trying to escape the Winnery. Really enjoyed the first book. It has a blend of a little bit of horror, sci-fi, and fantasy. It was a great time. Next class that I'm going to have to complete, and that is Conjugation. Unfortunately for Conjuration, I have to get an Ordinary, a Qualified, and a Distinguished. So for Ordinary, this is the hardest prompt, I think, for me, and it is the foundation of necromancy. Read a necromantic book. Now, I love books that have necromancy in them, but unfortunately, I just don't seem to have a lot on my shelves or really know of that many. So I looked around, thought about it. There was one in particular that I knew I could make work, but I just didn't really want to, but we're gonna have to. We're gonna have to make it work, and that is Harrow the Ninth by Tasman Muir. I read Gideon the Ninth last year. I liked it okay, I guess. The humor was just a bit too much for me. The modern day language and like pizza face and things like that, it didn't work. I know that it was supposed to be a very fun, quirky, like badass, pushing the limits kind of read, but it just tried too hard for me. Even though I did enjoy the mystery part of it, everything else just fell really, really flat. But I've heard that the humor doesn't play as big of a part in the second book, so I do want to give it a try. I'm not going to push myself. If it starts off and, 10-20% in, it's still exactly like the first book and I have the same problems with it, I'm just going to put it down. But I do want to give it a try because the ideas were really interesting, and there's so much love for this series. I feel like I missed something in the first book, so I do want to give it another try. Gideon the Ninth follows two characters, Gideon and Harrow, both of which are necromancers, and they end up, I think, on this ship for one reason or another, and there is people that start to die, and they're trying to solve this essentially grand thing and have to go through a bunch of challenges and are trying to figure out who is killing these people on this ship. I think there's going to be a whole lot more to it than that in Harrow, and I probably will need a quick Gideon recap, but that's the one I'm going to use for the Necromancer prompt. Then we're moving on to the Qualified, and that is Tales the Bones Tale. Read a book with bones on the cover or in the title. This one I thought was going to be a lot harder than it ended up being because I can use Nettle and Bone, which is the officially unofficial book club pick for the month of August. This is the first fantasy book by T. Kingfisher that I will be reading. And this follows our main character, Mara, who realizes that no one is coming to save them and she has to save her family herself. So she seeks the help of I believe, grave witch who offers her 3 things to help her kill the prince. She has to complete these impossible tasks to get these things. But these things are impossible, so she's going to need the help of the Grave Witch, a fairy godmother, a strapping former knight, and a chicken possessed by a demon, and they intend to be the hand that closes around the throat of the prince and all that he stands for in the kingdom. This sounds like a bit of a fairy tale-esque type story, which is usually not my thing, but a couple of the previous books that I've read from T. Kingfisher have been very quirky and really pushed some limits, so I'm hoping that that's what she's able to do in this book as well. Really, really short. It's like 245 pages, so I think we will fly through it. I'm interested to see what the rest of the book club thinks, and I'm excited for the late night crew to read it along with us. Next, we have D, Distinguished, and that is to Raise the Dead. The theory is to reread a favorite. So if you've already seen my August TBR, then you would know what the answer is to this one, and that's going to be the Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. This one I wouldn't necessarily call a favorite, so we're going to stretch this prompt just a little bit because there's not really a favorite that I really want to reread right now. This is one that I read and enjoyed last year, I believe, but I read the indie version. Then when it got picked up by Tor, she said that she was going to be adding some stuff back in that she wanted from the previous that she wanted to put in the indie version, but it was just going to make it too long. And she also said that it was necessary to move on to the Atlas Paradox. This follows a group of 6 people who are the best in the magical class, and they have to go to fight to be a part of this elite society, but only 5 of them are going to get in, and we don't know what happens to the 6th. Moving on to restoration, I need just an O in this one, and that is object restoration, a single object on the cover. For this one, I'm going to be going with Glow by Raven Kennedy. This is the 4th book in the Plated Prisoner series. Reading this for the Fantasy Romance Book Club hosted by Sahar from Basically Bookish Reads. We'll be taking a break until the 5th one comes out. This follows our main character, Auren, who is dipped in gold, and she is the prized of King Midas. But when she is traveling to meet him after a battle ensues, she gets taken prisoner. And last but not least, we have Demonology, and again, all I need is an O in this one, and that is Imp Wrangling, and to read a fantasy. So, super easy. We're going to be going with The Shadow of Lightning by Brian McLean. This is one that Rachel picked for me, and I've been really wanting to read some of Brian McLean's work. This follows our main character, Demir, who was a prince but left his legacy behind to go live the life that he wanted. But when his mother dies, he gets roped back into this world and is trying to get magic, which is a fine art resource, and overthrow the guild families who are trying to take over the kingdom. Sounds interesting, sounds very political, and I like the idea of magic being a finite resource, so super interested to get to this one. Okay guys, so I think that is all 8 books that I need to read for my Necromancer Autumn Equinox series. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Good grief, my camera keeps shutting off, so let's try this one last time. If you guys are participating in the Magical Readathon, please let me know down below what your career is and how many books that you need to read. I'm super excited to give this a go in the Autumn Equinox. Thank you so much to G from Book Roast for creating this. I will link all of her information down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on Patreon as well as Goodreads, Instagram, and Twitter, all linked down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a good thumbs up and subscribe if you wanna, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!